What's up, Kat? How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you doing?
Good, good. Can you hear me good?
I can hear you well. Yes,
All right,
thank you
cool.
for joining us.
Cool.
We appreciate the time in the middle of your work day on the West Coast.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I had already had this marked off, so
No doubt. So we want to get into all of your career and exactly how you got to where you are today. And for us, it's a very interesting story because you've had quite a bit of personal success and commercial success. And so I'm going to read the bio that you sent over to me just so everybody could kind of get a bit of background on you. So born and raised on the streets of New York City, you discovered art at a very early age. The graffiti on the walls and the cartoons on the TV set a tone for a creative childhood. In true city kid fashion, you graduated from the High School of Art and Design, which we see on the screen right now, for those of you that don't know it. And you went on to get a BFA in animation at the School of Visual Arts. From the silver screen to galleries and even to toy shelves across the world, your style is distinctly recognizable and your own. You've been expanding your creative pursuits as well as your clients and exhibitions. And so now you're located not in New York City, but in Los Angeles with your family. And so I love so your trajectory and sort of, the work that you're doing. How did you get involved in all this, from cartoons to graffiti? What really caught your attention when you were growing up?
Well, I was always drawing and doing art as a kid, and I guess there was always graffiti around in my neighborhood. I grew up in Queens in the Left Rock City area of Corona, and there was always graffiti around, and so that was always like like a stimulus for my creativity and the colors and everything. But I think that in terms of wanting to be looking at art as a professional career, big in the early '80s, Garfield was really big, and one time they did like an Entertainment Tonight special on Jim Davis, which is a creator of Garfield, and they just showed him in his studio practice, and I always had a fascination as a young kid with like art tools. So I was looking at the pencils he was using, the markers, the pens, his drafting table, everything. And I was kind of like obsessed over it. So the fact that I saw this guy doing, like, to me, what seemed like simple cartoons, and he was making a living, not only making a living, but he looked like he lived in a big ranch. Like he was doing really good to be spotlighted on TV. I thought, wow, this is something that I could maybe do as a living, And I think that's what planted the seed in my head to kind of like just always want to do it.
And what did your parents think of your art, or at least that desire for artistic pursuit?
I think I benefited from growing up in a crazy time in the '80s in my neighborhood, because as long as they saw me, like, I guess, off the streets and just kind of being focused on something that wasn't, destructive, was cool. And also my father was a janitor at BMCC in Tribeca, community college. And I think he saw in that school, it was a college, and he saw that there were art classes there, like life drawing classes and stuff like that. I think they were just electives, but being that, my parents are first generation immigrants, if he's working in a college and they have art classes there, then it must mean there's something valid about it. So he was always supportive, and he just pushed me to not slack on it and just keep doing it.
Were you attracted to going out and sort of sneaking around like the graffiti writers from Corona? You guys, there was definitely a lot of writers in Corona back in the days.
Yeah, the Corona writers were kind of like a little older than I was. Corona was like all graffiti guys, and then like where I lived at, unfortunately, it was like a lot of drug dealers. So like the beefs around my neighborhood were based around money, But I just remember, in terms of mischievousness, like I grew up skateboarding, so we tagged up everywhere we skated, and I just remember that it was more like the high of doing anything mischievous back then, If I wasn't tagging up, I was like stealing candy. If I wasn't doing that, I was stealing comics. But it was just like the high of getting over. As a little kid in the neighborhood, it was just like, you know, on 4th of July, let me see how far I could throw this M80. You know what I mean? It was just
Sure.
that kind of stuff.
So when did you had ability? Was it when you started to apply to school, or was it really early on?
No, it was early on. I was always drawing. I always got a lot of attention from it, from like the teachers and stuff. And also, I was always surrounded by kids who were really good. So it was never like I was the best. I always knew it was something that I was good at, but I still had to work on it, you know. But I remember that when I was like in 6th grade, I was in the cafeteria just drawing and drawing Marvel stuff or superheroes or whatever. And it's one kid, Neil, he was like, hey, he showed me like a graffiti piece. And he was like, yo, you think you're nice, but yo, I bet you can't draw this, right? So I was like, oh, that's pretty simple. I drew it real quick, kind of just to show off without even thinking about it. And then he kind of set me up. He called this other dude over and he was like, yo, this dude's biting your letters. And like, it was drama right from the beginning. You know what I mean? So right there, I kind of learned a lot of things about like graffiti and lettering and like stuff like that, and like how territorial it was. You know, I was a little kid, so I couldn't fight this dude. He was like a super senior with a mustache.
And so you get into art and design, and which we see here. What kind of of an artistic environment was it for a young person like yourself?
Well, it pretty much as soon as you go into that school, you know, you have to take a test to get in there. And I mainly went in there because all of my skateboard friends went to that school at the time. Everybody that skated downtown and that skated in Queens went to art and design. So that's mainly why I went there. Once you get there, like freshman year, that school pretty much divides into two categories. It divides into people who are motivated by looking at good art and people who are discouraged by looking at good art. So I was in the motivated category. So I always kind of pushed myself. And but aside from that, it was, you know, it was night. It was like I went there from 91 to 95. So it was pretty much like you know, there were low lives in there, Decepticons. It was gang heavy. And so just like any other high school, but in this high school, if somebody saw your black book and it was whack, they threw it in the train tracks. You know, they threw your sketch pad. It was crazy. It was like that. So, you know, even if you were good, if they didn't like you, your drawing's getting ripped up, and there's nothing you could do about it. You know, that's just the era that it was. So it was pretty hectic. It was it was like a chaotic art school, you know, in a weird sense.
I think at the time, was it some of Mob Deep was going there,
Yeah.
or maybe Fabulous?
Yeah, Fabulous was my classmate. Mob Deep was in there. They were there for like the first month that I was in there, and then they were like super famous. Like, and then true to their name, when they rolled to school, it was like 30 of them. Like, there was a lot of them. Like, they never rolled just the two guys by themselves. And then Pharaoh Monch went there also, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that. And Scuff was there, and there was
Yeah, yep. So a lot
so
of people went there that I found out later on that went there. You know, I didn't. You know, I didn't hang out with a lot of graffiti writers there. All of my friends wanted to be rappers there, and I was like the only like art dude with them.
that's funny. So for everybody who's on here that are joining us late, we're talking about the High School of Art and Design in New York City, which was Kano's high school, and that was known for skateboarders, obviously for artists, but also at the time that he was there, a few very prominent MCs, and it was a real hub for creatives, for young creatives in New York City, and not everybody, as you mentioned, were so friendly, and it could be pretty thugged out. And
Mhm.
so, you graduate from art and design, and you immediately decide to go to SVA. Is that right?
Yeah, but not. It's not like I had a plan. I was just hanging out in the lunchroom, and this girl I was hanging out with, she was applying to all these colleges. You know, I was kind of like, I didn't even know where the academic advisor office was, so I was just hanging out, and she told me she literally filled out the application for me. It was like, you need to do this, da 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 da. So I was like, all right. So I did that, and I applied to that school, and I worked on a portfolio, and I got into the school.
Amazing. And so what was the difference between that SVA and, let's say, art design?
I think the big difference was that my mindset, I came in to School of Visual Arts as a freshman, and I was still kind of like in 12th grade. I was a knucklehead. I wasn't trying to hear anything. I thought I was like the shit. And it took about a year for me to kind of like adjust and also find what I want to do. I was more worried about getting paint on my Air Maxes than on my canvas. You know what I mean? It was one of those like, it just my mind wasn't at the right place. So once I got in the right place, I learned very quick that it was what you put in. You get out what you put in, and you're surrounded by all these people who are coming from all over the country to go to this school, and it's in your backyard, and you should make the most of it. So I kind of, just I knew that I'm paying a lot to be here, and I need a job as soon as I dip out. Like no excuses, right?
Of course. And so,
Yeah.
You go through school, you're studying illustration, painting, animation, all the things that are available to you. When you get out of school, what's your first gig?
So while I was in school, I started interning because I saw like some of my older classmates. I had some classes that were with like, if I was a freshman, they were like juniors, but I would talk to them a lot. So they would school me on stuff like, yo, you need this amount of credits by the summer. Don't take the summer off. Take some humanity classes during the summer. So when you come back, you can just focus on your art during the regular school curriculum. So I was like, I just remember all that, and I wrote it down, and I made sure to do all that stuff. And then when I was a junior, I was finally able to intern places. So when I was able to intern, I did an internship at MTV. I did one at Jumbo Pictures, which is both of them were like prominent animation studios at the time. That's around '97, And so when I graduated from School of Visual Arts, at least I had two places that knew who I was, like resume wise. And I was allowed, I was able to knock on those doors and get my foot in.
Excellent. And so where'd you end up? Where'd you land? What was your first gig after that?
So my first paying gig while I was interning was at King Features. It was a comic strip syndicate. They were trying to do some Popeye stuff, like cartoons, and I got hired there through a teacher. He liked my stuff, and it paid peanuts, but it was my first paying gig. And then when I graduated, I ended up at MTV Animation, and that was my first professional paying gig, and I worked there. As soon as I graduated, I got that job. Yeah, I worked on a show called Daria back then.
I remember Daria, and so
yeah.
This is Daria
she
right
is.
here. And so
yeah.
And so you became a full-time animator, is that right? Or what were you doing for that show in particular?
Yeah, at the time I was kind of disciplined and all that stuff when I got out of School of Visual Arts, but particularly I was a character layout artist for Daria. So Daria, all the animation was done overseas, so we locked down all the character poses and set up the shot, and pretty much illustrated the blueprint for each scene, and before I went overseas with all the camera instructions and all the drawings that they need to in between.
I get it. So you're drawing this world, and then from there, you sent over a bunch of animation work here. So let's just get into it. Let's get into it.
Okay.
So you jump into the world of animation.
Yeah. So I jump into the world of animation. And very quickly, I find out that, everybody that I'm working around with, they start getting phone calls, but like 2 weeks before the job's done for other gigs. So I'm new to the game, and I realize, okay, I have to start putting in work and reaching out to people. So I do that, and I'm able to line up other jobs after that. So here's a show that I worked on. It's called Kids Next Door. I did storyboard revisions on this very early. It was one of the few shows that was done in New York at the time that looked like this, that was for Cartoon Network. So I jumped on this, and then as soon as a season's over, there's like a 6-month gap. You just keep moving. You're kind of like, it's almost like an artist gypsy lifestyle in New York. You're on for like 4-6 months, then you bounce, you do something else, and you come back to work on another season if there is another season. This
And
is a show.
you get to touch a lot of different things in that way.
Yes, a lot of different things. You get to work in different styles, and your network grows really quick because the people who you work with in this crew, everybody goes different places, you know. And the guy you worked with last project, he might be a producer on the next project, and he brings you on board. So very quickly, you end up with like a really long resume of all these things, and before you know, you have your experience speaks for you, you know. So this is a show called Venture Brothers that I worked on as an animator. I worked on it as a character designer and as a storyboard artist in different seasons.
Amazing.
Yeah,
So we can jump into a few other ones here.
yeah, this was Scooby-Doo. I worked on this once I moved out here to California. I started working at Warner Brothers Animation, and that's when we worked on Scooby, and like I got to work on the Batman shows and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So you get to touch all these Warner Brother projects. And so when you're working at a big studio, are you able to work from project to project within the studio, or how does that work for
Yeah, sometimes it is within the studio. Sometimes it's within the studio, and sometimes you have to dip out, you know. And so I'll jump around. Like over here, I'll work at Like when I was working at Warner Brothers, after that project, I would jump over to Cartoon Network, and then on Hasbro, and then maybe I'd end up back at WB at Warner Brothers, you know.
Got it. And so, so you're doing this animation. When did you find time to work on your own stuff?
Oh, that's I've been double timing it since forever. Now is the first time that I'm kind of like nowadays I'm doing me full time. But when it's like that, I finish work, I go home, I hang with the fam, we eat dinner, we watch a movie or whatever, and then I would usually come back to my studio from like 11 to like 2 in the morning and just work on whatever it is, whether it was painting something for a group show or just developing stuff.
So let's go through some of your own work. See if you can kind of take us through some of what it is. And so here we have a painting of yours.
Yeah.
So now now this is your own style. You're not doing anybody else's style but your own. Tell us about your style and the evolution of your style.
So my style comes from it's sort of a blend of different disciplines. Obviously, there's character designs in there. There's fluidity and motion that comes from when I used to animate, when I was animating more often. There's also a flow that's like, I got from graffiti, right? There's rules that I'm breaking that I'm not allowed to break when I'm working in animation. For example, there's a lot of tangents in there. Those are things that we are specifically schooled and trained to not to look out for. So when I get into my own world and I'm designing my own characters and creating my own pieces, I'm purposely breaking those rules because I don't have to work within that format anymore, and it's more liberating for me.
And your subjects, who are you do you tend to illustrate? And I mean, this looks like these are people from Queens or from New York.
Yeah. Yeah, I always illustrate things that I would want to see, right? So, I mean, I know representation is a huge thing right now, but for me, it's kind of how I always saw things. I want you to be able to look at my stuff and say, that's not just a black kid. Maybe he's Panamanian. Maybe he's Dominican. That's not just an Asian looking girl. She might be Colombian too. I'm a hybrid of like different nationalities. So that's kind of what I like to illustrate. All of the above, like when it comes to races and stuff.
And so you pull in a lot of, different cultural references as well when in some of your work. And, here you see, fashion, you have sort of this, a bit of a graffiti element. You have multiculturalism, and, it's very dynamic. What was this particular piece for?
This particular piece was just I did this a while ago, but it ended up I ended up working with Universal Pictures and Studios, and we were able to do this as an actual Back to the Future licensed thing. So this was just a little tribute piece, at the time when the Air Mags, which is what he's wearing, the Marty McFly sneakers were re-released. it was all the craze, and I kind of just wanted to draw them, but I wanted to have one of my characters wearing them, and it's my take. Like if I did like a Marty McFly, this, he would look like this, and the arrow is like the Back to the Future arrow, but yet it's a graffiti arrow, and yet also it's an animation arrow that indicates action and flow. So there's all these little things, and I kind of just like having all of the action going off screen. He's coming in screen with the lights on his sneakers, and everything else is shooting out screen. So there's
Yes.
this like, it's very transit. Hence the bar at the bottom. It feels like a train track almost without having to put a train there. It's like just you get it instantly. It's kind of just like a weird kind of language. At least for me, it is. I just put it there, and I know what that means.
Yeah, it's sort of like the no clearance.
Like Hazard.
The hazard, exactly. And here's another painting again.
Yeah.
And you pull in a lot of like fly little fashion references, especially with your headwear.
Yeah. Well, I'm a product of that, right? I'm a product of the 90s, like specifically like New York. So we were doing all that, it's just something that's sort of dear to my heart, like in terms of like fashion and like, the Fat Farms and the early Echoes and all that stuff. Back then when you liked a girl, it wasn't that just that she was pretty. She was like fly, she had the ill apparel, she had the ill boots. It was the whole package. So as an artist, I always like remember all those little things. So if I want you to like this art, I'm gonna make it as fly as I can with little hits of details that I like.
And so tell us a little bit about this piece. I mean, here it looks like there's maybe, hoop earrings that are turning into letters, and those letters are structures. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
depth in this piece to mention.
Yeah, this piece is a piece that I just kind of started because I always like play with curves a lot when I'm doing like a face. So one curve leads to another, and then a letter comes out of her hair, and then I want to make it like that S. I wanted to make it exist more in space, so I did her hoop earring and I cut it off there, so it looks like a physical plane that it's hitting, and then this is part of a two-piece a diptych, I guess it would be called. One is called Venus, and the other one is called Mars. So this one is like, it spells out Venus. The letters are in there, and then women are from Venus, men are from Mars is the concept, right? So she's
Yes.
looking down, and she's powerful, and she's looking at the man who's like small, So there's little things like that, and it's just me playing with curves and shapes and kind of like making it flow, wanting to, one of my big inspirations in terms of drawing is Al Hirschfeld, and I love the way his lines just flow. He's called the Line King, and he's like what I imagine a graffiti artist being if they did portraits. You know what I mean? Just the flow of letters is like how he draws. So here you see it, and I'm kind of like, like with what I just said, you see the microphone going into the ear. It's like these lines, and just kind of like just lines weaving. His collar comes around and it turns into the R, and it goes into the S. His arms swooping out of the shape, and here's, the Mars character, the reaction to Venus, and the woman's in his, she's still powerful and she's in his hand, as in like he's got the whole world in his hands, right? And if you're old school New York, then you recognize those towers in the back. Those are from Brooklyn, back in the days. You could see them on the LIE. I forgot the name,
Yeah.
but those are throwbacks, and those are just put in there because when I showed this painting, it was in a gallery in Brooklyn. So I said, let me throw in something in there for the OGs,
Right, for the people that know.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned Al Hirschfeld. Who are some of the other maybe illustrators that inspired you along the way that you looked at and said, hey, you know what, this style, or you mentioned earlier the creator of Garfield. Who else jumped out at you?
When I was animating, and that was like my goal. Um, there's like Disney legends, like Glenn Keane and Andreas Deja. These are guys who, like, in their drawings alone, before their drawings hit the screen, when it's just rough pencil, the drawings have all this uh power and energy, and that's kind of what I was always attracted to. If I could make a drawing feel like it's moving without having to do 24 drawings a second, I kind of, that's what I really want, and that's what I'm still going for. That's why I try to keep things fluid throughout my drawings. So those guys, there's like, in terms of you know it just, there's so many, I mean, there's so many,
Cool, cool.
Jamie, yeah.
No, so that's cool. I want to continue to show some of your paintings
Sure.
for everybody to really get a sense of your style, of your character style, which I think
Yeah.
is very pronounced, and just the way you mix these elements for movement um, is very unique, and it's very funky.
Thank you.
So here we go with another one, and this looks like she's carrying some kind of like transformer beat machine or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's essentially like Soundwave, but like Soundwave was a transformer. Sorry if I'm getting geeky here, guys, but Soundwave was a Decepticon, and he was actually a Walkman. But I didn't think that would work nice, so I just made it a big boombox.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
so this is kind of like one of those hybrids of like, yo, here's it's a little geeky, right? But it's also cool. And then here's like a badass, like, cool chick, but she's also like, I'm big on representing women in a powerful light. I don't want, it's easy for me or anybody to just, you know, make it super, super sexy and be like, yo, that's, there it goes. But I kind of want to just aim a little higher, right, for it. So, so yeah, that's just, and it just so happens that now it's cool for things to be super geeky, You go to comic conventions, and there's girls everywhere, it's crazy.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's a cool
Yep.
thing.
Yep. Yep. And this is the original. Before the girl, I did this character, which kind of, so this is also like a diptych. It has like a, they're both facing each other. So he's carrying Blaster, which is the Autobot boombox. Yeah.
It's very, very cool. This does remind me a bit of that sort of like the early 90s flavor of fashion, kind of like the 5 panel hat
Yeah.
kind of thing. It reminds me of like kids wearing Echo or Fat Farm.
Yep.
And
Yeah. That's the era. The Steep Tech North Face, the ACG boots, like all of that.
that's right. That's right. It reminds me of this guy. I don't know if you remember this illustrator, Robo or Robbo, and I know you've experienced this in all these companies that you end up working in, whether it's a studio or, a network or whatever, in these design departments, there's so much talent,
Yeah.
so many great people. And, I remember in the fashion game, so many illustrators, in the room, in all these companies. This sort of reminds me of those cats. Like this is how they showed up to work. Uh,
Right. Right. Right.
you know, and so you have pieces like that, and you have pieces like this,
Mhm.
which now you have. It seems like this is Biggie on the left. Is that correct?
Yeah. Biggie on the left and Nas on the right.
Biggie and Nas. And so growing up in Queens, it sounds like not only did you have a skate soundtrack, but you had a hip hop soundtrack.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's coming through in your work. How much of it is still in your work today?
It's huge, even more so now because, like, I've been living in LA for the last 10 years. So, like, I'm always kind of, looking at everything from New York and still trying to have the mindset. It's something that I still have, and that I never want to lose. So I'm always trying to stay in tune with what's going on. And I feel like it's part of my work. I want it to always be part of my work. It's the fabric of what makes me. So I kind of always want to showcase that.
So, and some of the images that you shared, you've come out and worked on the streets down here in Miami, actually many years ago.
Yeah.
And so what attracted you to come down here and paint, during the whole Art Basel thing that happens?
That I was actually invited to back then. There was something going on. I forgot what part of town, but it was during Art Basel, and me, Sket One, Tristanine, a couple of us got flown out here for that. Flown out for that. That kind of ended up kind of like not being so hot, so we just went around Miami looking for other peeps, and we just started painting with them. And this happened to be on the side of there's this graffiti artist in Miami. His name is Chrome, and this was his gallery at the time, MSG, I believe his crew was.
Yep.
And he was cool with letting us paint there. He was just like, "Yeah, go ahead, go for it." And this was like it was like 2009, so it wasn't like it wasn't like the art hotbed that it is now. It was kind of just like there was a lot of people just tagging up and just painting.
Yeah, it's changed a lot since 2009. That's for sure. So you're able to scale. You're working small on canvas, on screens, but then here you're scaling up, and you're joining, the world of writers and street artists when you do the public artists when you do this. Did you find it challenging to scale?
No, I don't think I did, because like for this one particularly, stuff like this, it's very loose. So I just had like a really rough sketch, like that was like about this small. So I mean, I feel like I mostly worked it out on the wall. Also, by watching friends of mine's work, I wasn't as intimidating because I know that no one gets it right on the first time. There's like layers of sketching something out, you know. These walls are legal, so it's not like I got a jet, you know. It's like I could actually work it out.
Yeah.
So so I wasn't too worried about that. And like, I spend a lot of time practicing how to draw. At the end of the day, it's just a big drawing, right? So that's something I'm comfortable with.
And here we go. Now you scaled this one up. I mean,
Yeah,
change the colors.
this one, I actually used a projector for this one because we had like, I mean, we didn't have a lot of time to do it. We just had like a day and a half to do it. But and I worked with my friend Shane Jessup. He assisted me on this project, and we just knocked it out. It was almost like client based, kind of. It had gotten approved, and so we had to. I like when I'm doing something with a client, if it gets approved, I want it to look exactly like what I handed in. And yeah.
And so where did this piece live?
This piece still lives in Glendale, California, next town over from where I'm at right now. It's on the side of a toy store.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this piece? This is a very fly piece.
Yeah, thank you. This one I just completed at the museum, Chinese American Museum in Los Angeles. And it's on the third floor. There's a couple of other murals there. And this one's really big. I wish I would have stood in front of it. But this one is actually, the space didn't have any ventilation. So this was all painted by hand. It was all acrylic, hand painted.
Very nice. And so is this a permanent installation or part of a show, or what is it for?
It's part of a show. It's to commemorate the reopening of the museum. It's been closed during the whole pandemic, and they just opened it back up to have people inside. And it should roll into, I think it stays up till April. So if you're at the Chinese American Museum, you can check that out.
Very, very cool. And so there's a few more street images that I want to share, and then I want to jump right into toy design.
Yeah.
So here's a piece in New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was in the Bowery, and this was part of a Centrifuge collective. They had all these cylinder blocks that they let people paint on, and then these cylinder blocks. The cool part about this project and why I wanted to do it was You got to paint one, and then that piece got essentially got buried in Manhattan with the pipes and everything. So when they replace all those cylinders, your work goes down there, and I just thought that was cool to be part of the city in that weird way. So yeah, it's buried somewhere in Manhattan.
That's very cool. That's very, very
Yeah.
cool.
And this was a van in Orange County. This, the company that owned this van is a sofa company that a friend of mine used to work at. My friend Rolf, who recently passed away, but he was awesome enough to let me paint this side, and I believe Sket One painted the other side. I don't have a picture of that one though. This was the first thing I painted out here in LA. It was in East LA, and I went painting with Man One uh, and Sket. And I remember, I remember this time when I was painting this. We were in East LA, and they were all going to get drinks, and I was like, "I'm good. I'm just gonna paint." And they were kind of like, "Nah, we can't let you paint here by yourself, bro. You gotta come with us." It was like, like an alley.
That's
So
funny.
maybe it was like, I was out of my element. Obviously, I was fresh off the plane.
Right, right. You thought it was sweet.
Yeah.
So, and then you have this one. This is a very large piece.
Yeah.
Again, and this is in New York City, I imagine.
Yeah, that's on the corner of Rivington and Allen. I think it's covered up now, but it's got like scaffolding all over it. And I think everyone went to town on the bottom during quarantine. But yeah, I painted this for the Lisa projects, the Little Italy Street Arts project. They asked me if I would be interested in painting the side of a building. It's the biggest thing by far that I've ever painted. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but then my wife was like, "Please do it, because I'll never hear the end of it." So I was like, "All right." so, yeah, I agreed to it. And then when I show up there, it was like the most intimidating thing ever. It was huge, and we projected that artwork on there from across the street, and did it at night, and even tracing that artwork, it was crazy. I was on a boom lift all the way up there, and you know it was crazy, man. I'll put it this way. On the first night that I was tracing that thing, like a car drove by and hit the arm of the boom lift, and my whole shit shook up, like the whole cage. And I was like, I don't know if I was supposed to be doing this, but
Wow.
it was a lot of elements, a lot of things that I didn't account for being up there. It's windier than I thought. I went through a lot of heat, a lot of there was raining, there was a lot of wind, and that thing sways a lot when you're painting on that boom lift. I never realized how much that would be part of it. But yeah, all learning experiences, and yeah, it was awesome. I couldn't. It was one of those things that when I finished it, it was like out of body experience. I didn't even believe I did it. It's crazy.
That is crazy. And so I guess you have a newfound respect for these muralists that are painting, people like you mentioned before, like Tristan Eaton or Shane
Yeah.
Jeff, and the work that they do.
Yeah, it is. I those guys at the same time, they put it in my head to even entertain something like this. If I didn't know those guys, I probably would never even think of doing something this big. But because they did, it kind of allowed me to think that big. But yeah, I was ready. After I finished this, I was ready to sit on a computer and like move some pixels.
It's
I needed a break. So yeah, much respect to everybody who goes from one big mural to another big mural, because it really is a physical challenge to do that. It's
Yes,
you know
that's
what
one of the things that I think many people don't realize is just the physicality being up there, and the movement in your body, and just
yeah.
how much work it really is.
Yep.
And so you go from this kind of work that we're looking at to this kind of work.
Hmm.
How did you get into toy design, or what made you want to get into this world of vinyl and three-dimensional work?
My my AirPods might die out in a little bit. It just so yeah, the toy thing is very interesting. At the time, for me, I was working as an animator in the East Village on Lafayette, and on my lunch breaks, I would go to this toy store called Toy Tokyo, which everybody kind of knows in New York. But this was around '04, and I would always go back. I would always go there, and I'd come back with a toy or something. I was just like always buying something there, and but that's how I discovered artists like Michael Lau and Eric So, and these guys were toy artists from like Hong Kong and overseas. And I quickly looked at it and I was like, yo, these guys are doing like hip hop urban toys and they're not even from here. They're from like, Asia. That's crazy because this stuff kind of looks just like my sketchbooks and like it's totally my vibe, right?
Right.
So I started looking at it and I started getting more intrigued by it. One year I'm at San Diego Comic-Con doing the comic book stuff. This one guy looks at my work and he's like, yo, you need to be designing toys. And he walks me over to the area where like Kid Robot and all those things are. And he's like, you need to be over here. Your shit like needs to be toys and this, and that. And I kept that in mind when I went back to New York. I was just thinking that stuff. I kept thinking of it. And then I met Eric Nacelle, who was like, he was a sculptor, and I hired him to just to sculpt one of my characters to see how it looked. And I really liked it. And he was like, yo, if you want to make a toy out of it, I know a production company, and you can make a toy out of it if you want, if you have the loot. At the time, it was just me and wifey, and we were both working, and I was stacking chips. I was like, you know, I kind of went for it, kind of like not knowing how the business side works. I was kind of young and dumb in that regard, but I benefited from it because I just kind of threw my money in it and I just did it. And that first toy was this toy called Money Grip. And that kind of, back then, if you put a toy out, not everybody was putting a toy out. So if you put a toy out, it was like, yo, it got a lot of spotlight. Like all the blogs talked about it and everything. So I kind of put myself on the map with that toy, and then that got the ball rolling to other opportunities.
So this is Money Grip right here.
Yeah.
And so you did it. How'd you get out to the world?
So at first I was like, I got all the toys. It was like 600 toys. I showed up to my apartment in Queens. My wife was looking at me like I was crazy, but I got the name of a distributor, the number of a toy distributor that was out here in California. At the time, it was DKE Toys. And I talked to him, and he was like, oh, I got you. I distribute these toys. So what I did was, I had 500 toys. I separated the ones I needed to sell to make all my money back, and everything else I gave to him. So in my mind, I was like, let me just move all the toys that I have at New York Comic Con and selling them to stores here in New York. That way, everything that my distributors sell is all gravy, And luckily, at the time, this was pre-recession, so people were just like, it was like '05, '06. It was crazy. People were buying everything, so I did really good.
So what was your second attempt at this? What did you do after that?
The second toy I did was this toy called Bodega. It was essentially Bodega was a little like a quarter water juice with a spray can head, right? And they had like a box cutter in one hand and brass knuckles in the other.
All right, let's find it. I think you sent that to me.
Yeah.
I want to pull that guy up. Let's see if we could find Bodega in here. I don't know if I have it, but so go ahead. So break it down.
So basically, Bodega was like a quarter water juice. If you grew up in New York, you know what that is, like a little juice jug. And I did them in different colors. And I gave it the head that it had was like a head of a German cap, which was my favorite like spray cap to use at the time. And then I gave them a box cutter and brass knuckles on the other hand. And originally I just put them out all by myself. Originally I put them out with this company that wanted to do them. Then they dropped the ball. Then I took the property back and I released it as an artist series with some of my friends. And here and this
right
one,
here, right?
Yeah. So this one you'll see there's the purple one is mine, the orange one is Tristan Eaton, the pink one is Two Fly, the green one is Pez, and the blue one is Flying Fortress.
And so you got these out, and I'm guessing they sold out.
Yeah, they did pretty good. Yeah.
And then, so do you retire these after doing it, or do you ever go back in and do like a second round of them?
I wanted to do a second round, but sometimes like the factory, if you wait too long, the factory like changes over or switches over, and then at least for me, they told me that they lost my molds, so I was like, shit. So that would mean I'd have to pay for retooling all from the beginning. So I don't. That's kind of when you see a toy not come up for another wave, that might be what happens because that's what happened with me.
Crazy, crazy. And
Yeah.
so, and then do you end up now starting to get into doing these for other people? Are people calling you up and say, "Hey, we want you to design toys for us"?
No, not. I mean, sometimes yes. Yeah. Usually it's like, for example, in this case, this is a toy called the Dragon King, and I designed this just for. It was this company named Kuzo wanted to do a toy with me, and they were like, "Hey, let's do a toy. What do you have?" I was like, "Well, I've been wanting to do like this Bruce Lee toy, like my own take on a Bruce Lee toy." They were like, "Let's do it, fine," and we put it out. It wasn't licensed or anything. We didn't call it Bruce Lee. We just called it the Dragon King, and it went really well. And then years later, a company that has a Bruce Lee license, Bait, they hit me up and they wanted to do a licensed one. So I already had it dialed in. I was like, sure, let's do it. And now it becomes an officially licensed toy. Like it's kind of like a full circle moment for me. I get to work with the Bruce Lee estate on a toy that is 100% me creatively.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And so you've been able to, as a result, also touch other sort of properties.
Yeah.
And I think
So
here's one of them, right?
yeah, this is a bear brick. Obviously in the toy world, a bear brick is like a big bucket list thing that to get on your, you know, on your resume or it's one of those things that I always wanted to design one ever since I started messing with toys, and I finally got the opportunity to do that for Designer Con, and they let me design one and it got made. So that was like an awesome time for me.
Right. You're part of this huge club of
Yeah.
artists from around the world that have been able to touch this and be in good company.
Yeah. And then following that up, I guess I have some momentum going, and they asked me to design the Back to the Future bear bricks for Universal at DesignerCon 2020. So that was great because I got to go up in size, right? They start off small, and now I get to do a bigger one at a 400%, which is the one that they call those 400%, the bigger bear bricks. So
That's a very cool.
this is also a dope look for me, as a brand. It's like everything, all of these toys have my name, my logo on the back. So it's kind of like I get to work with these big companies, and it just kind of gives me more cachet for like other projects.
Does it make it easier for you as you work for these companies and to get personal projects off the ground?
Um, yes. For example, there's something if I wanted to work with another licensor, or another license, I forget which one it is, but if I wanted to say do something for like with Warner Brothers or something with Columbia Pictures or something, at least showing this makes it more, having something like this in your media kit or whatever makes it more engaging for them, being that you've already worked with properties before. In terms of Medicom, like I don't know. They're kind of like they're in Japan, so I don't really deal with them directly, and I don't know. All I know is that I've gotten to work on these bear bricks, and that's been pretty dope. In terms of like my own toys, I kind of do that over here anyway.
Got it. And so there are these other ones that I wanted to show. What is this? Official, unofficial?
Yeah, these are official Marvel figures that this was a dope come up for me. I also designed these just as like fan art almost. And then they caught wind of it and wanted to make toys of it. And this is a company called Unruly, which is part of Sideshow Collectibles. They're really big in the comic world and the collector world. and they have these licenses. They had the license to Marvel. So if I go to Marvel and try to get a license for these toys, they hit me with over the head with who knows how much I gotta pay, right? But if Unruly already has it and they love it and they just gotta show it to them and get the green light, then it gets made. And for me, they're licensing these characters off of me, so I get a royalty check from them. So it's like it'll come up for me. My name gets on it with Marvel as like sort of like a collaboration, and then I get paid royalties off of it. So it's dope.
That's a really great come up. Looking at these, it reminds me of those Michael Lau characters a bit that you were referencing that were really popular in the early 2000s. He had it so on lock that it seemed like people wouldn't touch it. Even like the Gardner series and all of that. And here you are flipping your style and sort of taking, the fashion aesthetic that you were actually a part of and bringing it into these properties, which is very cool. I mean, check out, Spider-Man's kicks as an example, or this, right?
Yeah, his vest was actually originally like a North Face vest, but they made me change that. But like, it's just one of those things. Like, Peter Parker is supposed to be from Queens, and if he was from Queens, this is probably what he would look like in my world,
That's right. That's very, very cool. And so you've gone on to do, other sort of, touch other IPs, is this the Dunnies and Fat Cap? Is that right?
Yeah, yep. That's when Kid Robot was like in their heyday, and they were doing they were on top, and they were doing cool stuff, and it was the thing to try to get, at least for me. I was always trying to get a toy through them. It's bizarre because like I had already my own toys out. I just kind of wanted to get on that list or have a part of that, be a part of that. So that was cool just to be part of that Kid Robot wave when it was lit.
It's pretty, and this is already a while ago.
Yeah.
And so what's next for you? What are you currently working on that, is it this? Is Ghetto Blaster what's next? What's next for you?
Ghetto Blaster is out already. For me, what's next is a couple of different things. I'm trying to, currently I'm trying to put stuff together to hopefully line up more potential collaborations for the next year. I have my first capsule collection in terms of clothing. It's just like a hoodie, t-shirt, and a hat that's coming out next year. And I'm doing that with this company called Headquarters in the Lower East Side. Very excited about that because I have yet to do anything with like fashion. So we're doing something, and that should be around February or March. I haven't released the date yet. But I have another Bear Brick coming out at San Diego Comic-Con this year, and that will be an officially licensed Bruce Lee Bear Brick. And that will be coming out in all three sizes. So like the big 1000% and all of that. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, in terms of painting opportunities, those just kind of pop up, so I never really plan. It'll just be something come up and it'll be like, hey, do you want to paint? Or a project, a client will hire me to paint like a cool wall for them and stuff like that. So I try to mix it up, but at the same time, number one goal here for me is just generating income and diversifying the ways I could do that within my art, whether it's like, an animation project or a royalty check that I get from somewhere, or just making product myself and selling it on my site. I have Designer Con coming up this weekend, and that's like a big thing out here for artists. So I have a booth there, and I'll be like hustling my wares and doing all that.
So what do you have at Designer Con? What can people look forward to checking?
Basically, I'll have this Ghetto Blaster. I'll have those Marvel figures. It'll be my first time selling them directly to consumers and signing them. So that'll be the first time that'll be available. I will have the Messenger figures that you saw, the Kaepernick figure. I'll have those for sale. I'll have prints. I'll have a rug that I got done with Ruptimize earlier this year, and some stuff from the archive.
So and it sounds great, and maybe we'll show up and cop some of the Ghetto Blasters and some of the other joints. I have the Kaepernick joint already.
Oh, nice. Appreciate that, Kat.
Sure. You mentioned collaborations, and I wanted to, highlight just a few of your collaborations so people could see, how that comes together, just some of the creative ways that you give brands some of your own personal aesthetic and funk.
Cool. So yeah, for this one, it was like, this happened when I was still in New York, and I got a phone call from Jordan Brand, which, I grew up a Jordan head. So to get that phone call was nuts, right? So I got a call to design if I wanted to design this lunchbox for them. So I designed this lunchbox, and little to my, I had no idea, but the lunchbox was the actual box that the sneakers came in, and then there was a comic book inside that I also got to illustrate. So it was just dope. It's one of those cool projects that they wanted my design feel, and I got to work with one of the brands that I loved growing up.
That is a very cool opportunity.
Yeah. Here, a couple of years later, they hit me up. Once I did that, that art director loved my stuff, and he hit me up and wanted me to. They're like, "Hey, this year we have this retro coming out, the 6, the 13s, and the 11s. Do you want to design some T-shirts for us?" And I got to design these T-shirts for them, and they wanted. This is one of those times where they had a direction, and I was drawing it for them, and they weren't liking it. And I was like, "Listen, you guys are trying to tell me what you want, but I think I know what you want. And if you just give me a day and let me rock it, and I'll give it back to you. And if that's what you're looking for, then let's do it. If not, we just move on, get somebody else, and, in a professional manner." So I did this overnight, and I gave it to them. They loved it. They were like, "We don't even need to see the other two. Just do them." Like, they sent me the money and everything. So that was one of those cases where, like, I kind of had to take the steering wheel and be like, "I know what you guys want," but you don't know how to say it.
And so, hearing that story and just, looking at all your work, I think, one of the things that I take away is that you've been able to be someone that's been open to opportunities, a good networker, and building your relationships in order to continue to, to get good clients and to grow as an artist and to make a living. I think that's something that, just hearing that, and for everybody out there that's listening that might be in this world or trying to break into this world, or that are artists that don't necessarily know how to navigate, relationships matter.
Yeah.
Right. And
big time.
Big time, right?
Yep. Even if it's a relationship that, that you built like 10 years ago, this guy who's at Jordan might be at Adidas later and like might hit you up for something. And, it's also important to stay busy, like when I'm busy, like the art director from, say, Jordan Brand that I worked with 8 years ago has been following what I'm doing. And they're eager for the moment to get to work with me again sometimes, and I'm I feel very lucky when that happens. It's just like, it's awesome. It's like, oh man, because that way it's not so one-sided, and I don't have all, they don't have all the leverage. It's like when a company hits me up, now I know it's like, okay, well, you're very aware of all the stuff I've been doing, so the money should be right, It shouldn't be that much of a conversation of like, it should be in the ballpark of what I would probably ask for,
Right. And so, in sharing your work, the importance of sharing your work and putting yourself out there and letting the world know is very valuable. It's a very valuable tool for you to use and for everybody to use. And so a lot of people like to hold things really close, thinking that, people will copy their style or mimic their work. But you're saying like it's important to show it.
Yeah, I think it's important to show it because you also don't know what doors might open up for you, Like you might you might think you want to be an animator, and some other doors might open up for you, and then you might find yourself in fashion. And that might be what actually does the work for you, what actually works for you creatively. There's so many ways one of the main reasons why I wanted to like share my story was because, I'm sort of like, how they say like gang related, I'm like graffiti related, but like there's all these other things I do, and there's no reason that anybody else can't do it. There's a lot of graphic designers that came from graffiti. There's a lot of comic book artists that at one time threw up tags, so it's important that like, I talk at the High School of Art and Design whenever I can, like every year when I go back for like Comic-Con. I try to talk to these kids just so that they know that, yo, one of my draws for animation was that, how I mentioned that I needed to get a job after college? That was like my number one thing. So animation just looked at when I would watch a cartoon and I would see the credits scroll, I would think I know I can do at least one of those things, like that's a job that I have to be able to do one of those things. So I always looked at it as a job listing. And I was like, well, one of those has to be my foot in the door, and that's always how I was thinking. And then one thing led to another.
Yeah. I think that, in what you're seeing and what you're mentioning, there are opportunities out there. There is business to be had. There is work out there for artists that want to find a home for themselves. And so, whether, hearing your story and going from animation to then going home to do your own thing, to work for yourself is the grind. And you're making it both commercially and personally for your own stuff, and then clients hit you up. I think there's a great lesson for everybody that's listening to us in determination and also in discipline with your craft. And that leads to success. That leads to you being able to show up. You know how to show up. You have the work ethic and you have the chops to do it. And so it's an amazing thing to listen to. And we really appreciate you sharing your story with us because we want to be able to share these stories to build community and to also show that there are paths, there are ways to go about it. And a lot of it is hustling, working, really, really about, focusing and not thinking that it's just going to be a gift given to you, but putting in the work. So we appreciate you. I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing and sharing all these images with us and talking to us today. It means a lot to me and to members of our community. So thank you very much.
Thanks for letting me get on the mic, as they say. I'm a fan of the museum, and I'm always watching you guys. I've been following you since forever, so it's just dope to be able to contribute in any way that I can, and shed some light on the art hustle.
No doubt. And so, we've reached the hour mark. I appreciate it. We hope to see you down here in Miami next time you come down here. Maybe you jump on a wall with us.
For sure.
And get busy and much congratulations on your success and good luck with Designer Con. I know it's going to be a good time. We're considering going out there. Someone might go out there just because we want to soak it up. We're fans of what you do and of all these designers that have been able to cross over and make it into this world of designer collectibles, of vinyl toys, and everything else. And so good luck. And for everybody that's out there on the West Coast, go out to Designer Con and go to this man's booth and cop all the pieces.
I appreciate it, man.
No problem. So have a great night and thank you for everybody that's joined us tonight. Kano, thanks so much, brother.
No problem, Kat. Anytime, man.
All right. Peace.